for Tuesday, September 7th, 2001. And it's a bit of a historic evening. It has been 18 months since we've actually had what we're now terming a hybrid meeting, but we actually had a meeting taking place the public was invited to. And that's first time in 18 months is tonight. So we have a hybrid meeting. It's going to be a learning process. We have some new equipment to accommodate that. And we'll see how it all goes forward. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Belisi is unavailable. She's out of town this evening, and I'll do my best to fill in for her. With that, are we ready for the roll?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, present.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey here.
Councilmember Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington here.
Mayor Belisi.
I have a motion to excuse Councilmember Fleming and Mayor Belisi. Mayor Belisi, as I mentioned, is out of town, and Councilmember Fleming has informed us that he's traveling for business and unable to attend this evening's meeting.
Great, Mr. Chair, this is Councilmember Keel. I make a motion to excuse both council members.
And Councilmember Figueroa seconds.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to excuse Mayor Belisi and Councilmember Fleming from this evening's meeting. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes by consent. With that, I'd like to invite Councilmember McCluskey to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I think your mic may be muted.
Councilmember McCluskey, you're muted.
Is this better? Excuse me. Well, I would start off with thanking Mayor Pro Tem for the honor of saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Appreciate that. Well done. Next, I'd ask for a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
This is Councilmember Keel. I move approval of our agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Councilmember Figueroa seconds.
With a motion and a second, we're now ready for to see if there's any objections. Are there any objections to this evening's agenda as distributed? I hear none, so the agenda is approved and we'll proceed. This evening we also have, as typical for us, an opportunity for public comments. And we do have a member of the public with us for comments. I would invite Chris Saunders to step to the spot on the floor indicated for a speaker, a new addition for us here, and to invite you to address the council. You have 3 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Good evening, and other members of the public, as well as audience members and those watching the broadcast. My name is Chris Saunders. I reside at 7786 40th Street West, Apartment A, in University Place, and I'm here to announce the reformation of the coalition United for University Place, and invite each of you to be at the first general meeting on Wednesday, September 15th at 11:30 at University Place Presbyterian Church in the lower lounge. The meetings through this fall will be the third Wednesday of each month, not including December. The coalition's purpose is to be a place to connect, collaborate as a community. United for University Place's purpose is here to step into the needs of the community. As we move into this fall, our meetings will focus on a community assessment to evaluate what areas of needs we have covered and what gaps we have as a community. For instance, during a needs assessment, we might be quite surprised to discover how many international peoples we have living among us. Foreign exchange students, immigrants, and others who have come for business or pleasure and have stayed longer. There are a few organizations already helping those moving here from other countries. Sunset Bible Church hosts a conversational English class on Monday mornings for those wanting help with their English development and cultural understanding. A partnership in English conversation is being hosted by First Baptist Church on Saturday mornings, but sponsored by Sunset Bible Church. There are other needs in our immigrant population of our community, and this would be an example of an area where we might find some gaps or needs. We are aware that we have a hard-working food bank managed well by Families Unlimited Network. We do not need a new one, but we may find that the community assessment might find areas where we can continue to step further in to assist those who are lacking in food availability at this time. A coalition helps bring that to light and find ways to resolve those issues. As we come out of a season of isolation, new challenges in our community will crop up. Preschoolers and parents, teenagers, seniors, whatever the needs, the coalition is here to bring light to them and facilitate partnerships with organizations and individuals to help step into those areas. Anyone interested in participating in the coalition is invited to the general meeting representing either an organization or an individual. We hope many will come and hear more on Wednesday, September 15th at 11:30 to 1 o'clock.
Very good, thank you, Ms. Sanders. Appreciate your comments, and I wish you the best of luck with the formation of University Place United. Thank you. With that, I'm going to move on to our consent agenda, and I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Yes, this is Councilmember Keel. I move approval of our consent agenda.
Councilmember Figueroa seconds.
Excellent, and so we have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. Are there any objections to the consent agenda approval? Hearing none, seeing none, the agenda, or the consent agenda is passed. Thank you. So, next on our agenda is, moving into a public hearing, and this evening's hearing will, is pursuant, public hearing will be continued on to, after this evening, the public hearing will be continued into September 20th at the council meeting that evening. This evening's public hearing is a budget carry-forward biennial adjustment hearing, and as we prepare to take future action on that. And Leslie Blindsdale, our finance director, is here to help us help present that issue and for the public as well to be able to address questions. Thank you, Leslie.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I'm Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director. Before you for tonight's public hearing is the 21-22 biennial budget adjustment. We held a study session on August 16th. If we can get the presentation slide up there, we can go to slide 2. Due to both ARPA funding announcements and the council scheduling delays, we're combining the carry forward adjustment, which is usually approved in June, and the mid-biennial adjustment, which occurs in the fall of odd years, in the midpoint of the adopted biennial budget. The carry forward adjustments recognize the carry forward of funding from 2020 for reappropriation in 2021. The reappropriation is comprised primarily of beginning fund balance adjustments, capital improvement projects, internal service fund carry forwards, and new and continuing grant funding. Next slide. The most significant change you'll note is in our restricted and CIP funds. This change is mostly reflective of carry forwards in revenues and expenditures in parks CIP, public works CIP, and municipal facilities CIP, and the related interfund transfers. You'll please note that appropriations for capital improvements are continuing in nature and do not lapse at the end of the year, so we carry those forward. In public works, we're carrying forward previously budgeted project expenditures totaling approximately $11.3 million. In the Park CIP fund, we are carrying forward expenditures for the Chambers Creek Trail project and removing a budget for a playground project for which we applied for a grant that we did not receive. We also are proposed carrying forward $959,000 in internal service fund expenditures for use in 2021. The most significant amount are in IT, $826,000, and are for hardware and software replacements pushed from 2020 to 2021. Next slide. Our expenditure carry forward changes, other expenditure carry forward changes include the carry forward of UPTV capital restricted monies. We've upped the contingency amount to 2% of our operating budget. Community development had some books and professional and consulting services that they requested carry forward of. City clerk requested carry forward of some codification money for items that did not occur in 2020 but will occur in 2021. Human resources carrying forward consulting services, and in the street fund we're carrying forward monies for street lighting, poles and bulbs, pavement maintenance monies, and a variable message sign that was purchased earlier this year, or is being purchased this year. Next slide. For the mid-biennial budget adjustments on the revenue side, we are recognizing some adjustments to our revenues based on updated estimates for various revenue sources, including our state shared revenues. Each year, MRSC provides a state shared revenue calculator, which helps us estimate our revenues. We also review other revenues for adjustments, and some significant revenue projection adjustments are as follows. We have an increase in our general sales tax that's due mostly to online sales. We are increasing that in 2021 and 2022, but in the forecast, we keep that, we're maintaining that at the previous levels until we see how long this increase lasts. This also increases our sales tax for parks. We are decreasing our utility tax projections for cellular and increasing refuse, water, and electric franchise fees. We base those on about a 3-year average, and we see how those are trending when we come up with our revenue numbers. We're seeing a reduction in investment interest, and so we're reducing those figures. We've included the addition of the ARPA funding, and we're also reducing fuel tax in 2022 based on new state revenue projections. We continue to see increases in our real estate excise tax from sales of homes, and we've seen an increase in gambling tax, criminal justice sales taxes, and we received a one-time state city assistance amount dedicated to police that we're including in this budget. And we also received a grant, NPDES grant for 2021 of $50,000. The remaining revenue adjustments for the mid-biennial adjustment are interfund transfers related to the CIP project carry forwards and adjustments to beginning fund balances. Next slide. On the expenditure side, Many changes have occurred in staffing since we approved the budget in late 2020. Staff leaving, retirements, and some department reorganization. So to get up-to-date salary and benefit amounts, a new position control report was run to update our salary and benefit projections. This adjustment includes an increase to the staff COLA amount of 0.5%. The original estimate for salary adjustments was 3%, but the June CPI increased by 5.5%. The union contract requires that we use the June CPI or 3.5%, whichever is less. So we've included 3.5%. We also are including sick leave and vacation payouts for employees separating service. And in 2021, for the first time in many years, we saw a reduction to the PERS retirement employer contribution rate, which decreased from 12.97% to 10.25%. These salary adjustments resulted in an increase of $63,000 for total city salary benefits and internal service charges in 21 and $148,000 in 2022. The salary range document is included in this packet with the 2022 ranges updated to reflect the change in the COLA percentage. We have some other expenditures. If we go to the next slide, there were several items this year that were approved by council that we're getting into the budget to be officially appropriated. The contribution to the Veterans Memorial. There was a court cost increase with the new court contract and the tenant improvements to Suite A of the Civic Building. There were also some CIP adjustments, and at our study session, council requested a bit more detail about some of those new CIP projects. So if we can go to the next slide. The first one is for the Public Works Shop Equipment Shed, which is being funded with REIT. This is to cover much of our equipment that is sitting out in the weather. You can see on the slide there is an example of the type of building that we are proposing to construct, and also included in your packet, Gary Cooper, our Public Works Director, added some additional information and details for your information. The next slide is the Grandview Drive overlay. This is a grant-funded project that we received notification that we had received the grant. It'll provide a new 2-inch HMA overlay to the Grandview Drive between 48th Street West and 67th Street Court West. Will also include ADA curb ramps to be replaced. That is $731,000 is the grant amount. The city match of $129,000 is being funded with surface water management fees and real estate excise tax. The next slide is the Leech Creek Interceptor extension. This is money that is coming from the state budget, $2.1 million, and there is no city match to this one. It'll construct 2,600 feet of new sewer main and make sewer service available to about 20 acres of unsewered properties in the city. And the last one that we had discussed at the study session was Cirque Park improvements. It was previously approved, but when we applied for the grant more than a year ago, prices have increased, so it's an increase of $130,000, which will be funded with parks impact fees and real estate excise tax. Next slide. Other remaining adjustments that are new is a consulting for the Northeast Business District planning, some additional replacement poles for street lighting, some abatement funds for code enforcement, an increase to the animal control budget for credit card processing fees, and an increase in risk management for some increased insurance costs due to additional items that we're covering. Every project we add more streetlights, and that increases our insurance on that, and the various other things that we cover on insurance. And lastly, we have our changes to our baseline assumptions, what I like to call our fiscally responsible changes. We are restoring the $4 million reserved ending fund balance in the general fund. We are making a transfer to the strategic reserve, which will increase our percentage to the 15% of the operating budget. And we are also proposing early payoff of the last Public Works Trust Fund loan, originally scheduled to be paid off in 2025, and we'll utilize funds to do that this year. Next slide. Our financial forecast has been updated to include all of the adjustments, and all existing services and legal and contractual obligations can be met with existing revenues through the biennium and our 10-year forecast period. 2 public hearings are scheduled, the one tonight and an additional public hearing on September 20th, and council approval is scheduled for September 20th. Our financial position overall, as reflected in the financial forecast, has not materially changed. Next slide. So I'm open to any questions this evening, if anyone has any, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Appreciate the good work there. And we'll go to council questions in just a moment. These will be clarifying questions. We'll have comments later on later on in the process. Before I go to council questions, though, I did want to, since it's a public hearing, give the public at home an opportunity to contact us, and they can do that by calling us at 1-509-342-7253, and in doing so, you'll want to use conference ID 249-158-665#. So you can also find that information on your screen and take advantage of that as an opportunity to provide comment for us. So we'd certainly welcome to hear your comments about the proposed changes to the city's budget, biennial budget. Before we ask for those public comments, you can get queued up, but I'll ask first if council members have some questions. I see we have a number of hands that are raised, and that's great. I put those in our order, and I then as Councilmember Figueroa. So, I believe Mr. Figueroa.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Leslie, on the 40,000 for the Veterans Plaza, I might have missed it, but where did the money come from? Did it come from the park CIP or from where?
That came from the general fund.
Any reason why it didn't come from the park CIP since it's a capital improvement?
I just know that we classified it as a general fund contribution. I don't think we discussed using parks impact fees. We could certainly look at whether we could use a portion of those funds for that.
Well, I think we should, and I'm not sure what the process is, but who makes that call? But I certainly want to know why that wasn't used, which I think should be a preference. And if it wasn't a preference, why not?
Okay, I can look into that and revisit it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, thank you, Leslie. And that brings us to Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, a clarification for Councilmember Figueroa. When I asked this question several months ago, I was told that the memorial didn't qualify. So I don't know. That's just what I was told. In any event, to let you know, we've received a check for $28,000 and some odd dollars so far towards this project. We've already spent about $40,000 on amenities and so forth. So we're moving right along, and we haven't spent the full $40,000. And I don't know at this time if we're going to even need that, but costs escalate, especially when you're talking about labor cost. And so we're just happy that the city is supporting us as they always have, and financially also. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. And Councilmember Keel, excuse me, I have us out of order, my fault. But Councilmember Keel's actually was up before the others, my fault. But please, Mr. Keel, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, and no worries, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I know it is trying to herd the cats in the meeting. Leslie, thank you for your report. I have a clarifying question, and once we get to the vote, I have another comment I'd like to make, and I'll save that for later. But you showed us on your screen there was a negative number minus, and I can't remember exactly which one what it was, and you actually talked to us about why that was, and I heard it, but I didn't really understand it, and I'm wondering if you can go into a little bit more detail to clarify why that was.
There are a few negative number. Are you talking about on the forecast or with the adjustments to the budget?
It was near the end. It must have been the last set of negative numbers. There was two numbers. One was, I can't remember. I was going to write it down and I didn't do it. I apologize.
So on the revenue adjustments, we are decreasing projections for cellular utility tax.
That's it. It was
which is a negative 44,400, and that's just based on the monies that are coming in. We are looking to do a utility tax audit to verify that these continued decreases are in fact correct. So we're just awaiting the final contract for that so we can get that going. Our code allows us to do a 5-year look back. So they'll be doing a 5-year look back on that to try and to audit that. There's also a negative number for investment interest. The local government investment pool amounts are down, so we're decreasing our projections for that. We saw a slight uptick in June and July, but August dipped back down a little bit. So, and then the last negative number was fuel tax. Based on the most recent state numbers, they're projecting less money than we originally estimated. So that's a $63,000 reduction to the street fuel tax.
Yeah, thank you for that. And those were the three numbers. I certainly understand the fuel tax decrease. I do not understand the other two decreases, right? I would imagine, and you and I've talked a lot about doing the utility, the cellular phone deal, because I think those numbers are going up, and we're probably not gathering that as much. So yeah, thank you for that. So it was based on numbers that we saw, the reason why we had the impact. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And Councilmember McCluskey, your turn.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. In alignment with the cell phone, the taxes are in the decrease. Would it decrease if the cell phone is used on Wi-Fi versus through the regular towers?
No, the utility tax is based on the total amount of the bill. And so okay. we've seen some decrease because of, in trying to be competitive, the various cell phone companies are offering much cheaper plans. So you can get a plan for $45 and get 3 phones on it. And so our utility tax is 6% of $45, and maybe it used to be $100. And so that's been the biggest reason we've seen a decrease. But we also want to make sure that all of the entities are reporting correctly.
Right, and the smart watches, and they're doing major promotions for the 5G upgrades in the phone. Turn it in and get one free, or a couple $100 for the new fancy smancy iPhone as well. So I'm sure that is impacting everything. But there's a lot of business out there, so it'll be a curiosity as to see what you come up with. Yeah. My other question is on the Grandview Drive overlay project. I was noticing that on the map that a part of that was not covered, and it's not a finance question. It's actually a question as to why not complete the whole stretch to the curve? You know, why end it at that point? It seems like there's still several feet left before that one stretch is completed. So I don't expect you to have the answer to that.
Thank goodness.
But anyway.
And I'm not sure, I didn't see whether Jack Eklund was on the meeting tonight or not, but I can certainly have him get that information for you.
Right. I would like to know what why that is and the reasoning for that. And then the $40,000 for the Veterans Memorial, that is on a reimbursement basis. Is that correct, or is it going to be put out in a? I heard no.
No.
No,
And
the
I think
council
this-
bill was
I'm
for
gonna
up
clarify in
to
my mind what it is.
40,000. Council bill was for up to 40,000, with the initial amount at $28,055, and the additional 11 is if needed. So we have sent the original $28,055. They will be giving us an accounting so that we know whether if they need the additional. So we have fronted that money.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. In terms of my comments, I did have a question about the, as the Mayor Pro Tem Worthington role. Anyhow, question about the Public Works cost for the shed, and it was really, what is the cost per square foot? And I don't know the square footage of the proposed structure to figure that out. So some information there in the future would be helpful.
Okay.
And beyond that, I think that handles our clarifying questions. Is there anyone in the public that would like to give comment tonight, either here in person, where we actually have a member of the audience, first time in 18 months, I mean, it's exciting, and also, of course, online with phone-in. Amanda, is there anyone standing by?
Nope, there's no one in the lobby.
Okay, thank you for monitoring that. Have any comments here in the room? And I don't see anyone prepared to make comment. So with that, we will close the public hearing for this evening. And, excuse me, we will continue the public hearing until the meeting on the 20th, our next regular meeting. And with that, the public hearing is continued. The agenda on this item is actually for action on a future meeting, not on this evening's meeting. And so since we have another hearing to continue, we want to hear whatever the public has to say about that, and then consider how we want to move forward in our action phase. With that, I think we're ready to move on to the city manager's report. And I would invite Mr. Sugg to come forward, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council and the public. As reported in the September 1st City Headline newsletter, which was just recently released, on August 19th, Mayor Caroline Bellisi, along with Councilmember Javier Figueroa, Councilmember Denise McCluskey, and Councilmember Pro Tem Howard Lee, joined Colonel Shay Finnison, commander of the 16th Combat Air Brigade at JBLM, for a groundbreaking ceremony for the new Veterans Plaza at Cirque Park, which you heard about tonight earlier in the presentation by Leslie. The University Place Veterans Plaza Committee has been working on this project for more than 12 years and has been actively raising funds to support it. Their goal is to have the project complete and ready for dedication on Veterans Day, November 11th of this year, 2021. Well, I'm pleased to report that last Monday, the city crew began excavation of the site to prepare a flat pad. And Amanda, thank you very much. So I thought I would just share this photo with you. This part of the monies that we had to rent this, so that is a cost to that's a cost incurred to rent this piece of equipment. We don't have that on site, but we have capable operators, as you can see Tony West operate that piece of equipment. So that was last Monday, so just a little over a week ago. And then last Thursday, the Veterans Committee and their contractors were on site to now start laying out the site. So again, their goal is to have the project complete and keeping their fingers crossed and hope they can have their dedication on Veterans Day, November 11th. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem, I conclude my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sugg, and appreciate that. And with that, we'll move on to council members' reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Keel, as is our habit. So.
Okay, great, thank you. So I was caught off with guard. I thought Councilmember Figueroa was going to go ahead of me, but I just want to report just to one thing that's going on with Sound Transit. You all may have heard that we just finished our realignment process where we're trying to shore up a gap of $6.9 billion that we're short in due to the pandemic and rising costs, as everybody in government is feeling. The tough thing about Sound Transit is where everybody else is dealing in the thousands, maybe millions or tens of millions of dollars with their shortfall. Sound Transit is dealing in the billions of dollars, and so it just grows exponentially, the gaps. And so I'm happy to report that we do now have a way forward, and that's going to bode well for our city, meaning since we're toward the end of ST3, the fear is that we would spend up all the money with a gap, then all the ones that are at the end of the planning and the implementation piece would not have money to be finished. And so that would mean us. I mean, we're at the very, very end of the line. In fact, the line doesn't even get into our city proper. It stops at 19th and Mildred, which is right there at TCC, technically not in our city. And so as the chair, I was, interested in making sure that we had enough funds for the whole program across the whole agency, but also knew that we need to have enough money to get to my city, so we certainly have done that, and there's just a lot more work. We now have to operationalize what we stood up, and so I'll be eyeball deep into making sure that the work that the staff does, as well as the other electeds in all three counties, that we actually have a process that matches the goals that we laid forward to make sure that Sound Transit does reach our city in 2035, which is when it's slated to get here. And the other thing I will talk about is AWC. Today we had our meeting with the legislative committee. The committee has passed a slate of legislative proposals that we're going to talk about and promote at the next legislative session in January. We will all get a report out from that meeting, but just to let you know that that work has been done, and the majority of that is just a continuation of a lot of police reforms. We're trying to push the legislature to make sure that they get some clarity. We'll hear later tonight from our chief about things around clarity, but we're hearing that all over the state, where a lot of public agencies, police agencies, are looking for clarity around what these latest laws and rules are about. And so as AWC, will be certainly pushing that, along with the other things that we've always pushed around, funding and things like that, and make sure things are equitable for cities. That's the end of my report.
Councilmember Keel, thank you. And by the way, with a temporary chair, you have to be nimble of foot, and you are. So since I called you out of order this time, once again, just in front of the line instead of the usual spot.
Yes.
But,
thank you.
Good nimbleness, thanks. And also, thank you for slugging away and making sure 2035 will come with us getting a completed near connection to the system. With that, I'll turn back to Councilmember Figueroa, who would have usually been first up, but for me. So, go please, Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And this is Councilmember Figueroa. And I appreciate Councilmember Keel going first, because sometimes, and I'm one of them, we forget the role that our Councilmember Keel takes on behalf of our council and our city, which is some very big roles, some very big shoes. I'm not sure if I'm willing to, my foot is that big, but I do appreciate it, and it's probably not said enough, and I know the rest of our council probably thinks the same way. But Kent, thank you for serving on the Sound Transit, on the Pierce County Transit, and the AWC board as president. Those are crucial leadership roles that not only place statewide, countywide, but like you mentioned, and certainly will be felt in for our citizens in UP. And we do appreciate your time and your effort and your leadership. Thank you.
Very good, Councilmember Figueroa. Well said. With that, then, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. This is Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. I have two comments. The first one has to do with the Veterans Plaza. As the city manager said, we should have it completed by Veterans Day this year. We run into supply chain problems. These granite pylons are coming from India. There's a little shipping problem there. There's giant backups at the ports of Los Angeles and San Francisco. But we are on track right now, and hopefully that we'll get this thing going. I want to make sure that people understand that you can still purchase the commemorative paver, which has your name on it, your loved one's name on it. And to do that, you go to the Veterans Plaza website, which is upveteransplaza.net, or you can send a message to me and I'll get you an application form. But those are still available. And what will happen is that the way that the memorial was designed, those pavers will be put in place. The ones that haven't been purchased will be put in place, and then the etching will be put on it later. So this is an ongoing project. A second comment I just wanted to make was about COVID. I'm sure that each of you watch the COVID numbers every day. Recently, every day has broken new record for us here in Pierce County. I don't understand exactly why we are the epicenter of this, but the fact is that that's what the data is showing. So all I can ask, I'm not a doctor, but I would recommend that you get a vaccine and that you wear your mask, because we've got to beat this thing down. We've got to conquer it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. And Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have one comment, and I just want to thank the Friends of Colgate Park for laying out the gravel in front of their entrance and weed whacking all the weeds. It looks beautiful. And for our Public Works Department that gave tons of gravel in order for them to do that. So they moved mounds of gravel. And if you didn't get a chance to see the outcomes of it, it looks pretty darn nice from what it had looked about 4 months ago. And so it's so I want to give the Friends of Colgate Park from pulling their friends together and rolling up their sleeves in the Public Works to aid and assist with the materials in order for them to complete that and keep our parks looking great.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate the bringing that forward for us. Well, let's see. From as the Mayor Pro Tem tonight, as far as my comments, I'll make them fairly brief. One is just to remind folks, earlier this evening we had a citizen come up and invite people to participate in the forming of United University Place that has its first meeting coming up on the 15th of September at 11:30 at the University Place Presbyterian the lower conference room, I think is what it was, or lower meeting room. And it sounds like a great opportunity to help the community. Another comment is really to invite your feedback about this evening's meeting, particularly since it's our first hybrid and we're learning, along with the chair just genuinely learning every day. For example, since with our current protocols, since we have other people in this somewhat large room, it's necessary and appropriate to wear a mask throughout the meeting here. That has some action, but it does make my voice perhaps a little muffled, and I have a tendency now to want to keep pulling my mask up too. So anyhow, just some of the things that are going on, but would welcome any feedback about the process on that. I think with that, I'm going to move us into our study session, and where we will have a presentation made by Pierce County Recreation. And so we're ending the regular meeting and moving into study session. I believe we have some folks from Pierce County. Is that where we're starting? Oh, let's see. Gary Cooper is ready to start us off. Is that correct?
Good evening, Council. I'm Gary Cooper, Director of Parks, Public Works, and Facilities. One of the council goals that staff continues to work on is seeking opportunities for partnering with other agencies for recreation. Tonight we have Nisha with Pierce County Parks here to share information regarding one such opportunity to partner in the area of specialized recreation. It's a program I believe was started in 2017, but Nisha will correct me if I'm wrong. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nisha, someone we've worked closely with here at UP for several years. So Nisha, I'll step out of the way and let you take over.
Thank you, Gary. So my name is Nisha Thomas-Schott. I'm the Parks and Recreation Manager for the West Region of Pierce County Parks. I have with me today Jen Spanny, who's a recreation, and Jen Sargent, who's a recreation coordinator, and they both lead our specialized recreation program called Adventure Within Reach. So we were asked by Gary to give you a program overview, and they will do that, and then we'll take questions at the end. We started speaking to Gary about a couple months ago regarding a jurisdictional partnership that would allow us to serve your residents in their community. And this is the program that we would launch. So with that, I'll let Jen take it away.
Thank you, Council, for allowing us to come today and talk about our specialized recreation program. It's one of my favorite topics and Jen Sargent's favorite topics to tell everybody about. Tonight, what I plan to do is to talk to you about what is specialized recreation and why is it needed. What is the current need within Pierce County? And I forgot to share my screen. I am so sorry. Here we go. Can everybody see that? Okay, because I cannot see anybody else. We'll next talk about a brief history of specialized recreation within Pierce County. We'll meet our staff, and we'll talk about current activities offered through the specialized recreation program. What is specialized recreation and why is it needed? Specialized recreation is a form of recreation for individuals who have special needs of some kind. This could include developmental, intellectual, physical, emotional. As you can see in the picture on this slide, we have varying equipment that we use to meet the needs of our participants. In this picture, you can see we have tables that we can adjust to different heights so that we can accommodate someone who's in a wheelchair or someone who's seated. Other equipment that we use might be paintbrushes that are larger with a bigger grip for those who have fine motor skill issues, or balls, sporting equipment that has bells or lights in them so that those who are visually impaired and or hearing impaired can see or hear the ball coming toward them. Currently, there are very few agencies supporting participants in this way. What is the need within Pierce County? Approximately 1,000 households need this service. We have identified that about 10% of that number come from University Place. We find that participants will travel all over the county and into other counties, sometimes up to 3 hours to get the programs and services that they need. A brief history of our specialized recreation within Pierce County. Pierce County introduced Camp Let a Fun, becoming the first public agency in the area to offer programming for individuals with special needs. I'm happy to say pre-COVID that camp is still running, and we hope to be able to bring it back when we're able to meet in person again. Shortly after Camp Lots of Fun was created, Metro Parks Tacoma started programming for adults who needed the service, and Pierce County kept up, and we provided programming for youth with special needs. I'd like to introduce you to our staff. Our staff are the people that make this program. Not just myself and Jen Sargent, who you'll meet in a minute, and Carly Schwimmer, who's our recreation coordinator. We have amazing part-time staff that get to know our participants on an individual level. Our participants look each week to come back and chat with our staff. They're their friends. In fact, this summer, many of our staff went back to college, and it was a sad time for our participants as they had to say goodbye, and hopefully we'll see them again. The staff that we have are innovative, they're kind, and they treat everybody with dignity and respect, and that's why I feel our families keep coming back to see us. We have many activities that we offer throughout our program: virtual programs, social programs, Special Olympics, fitness, special events and camps. I want to highlight virtual programs and social programs for just a minute. We were the first agency in the area to say there's a problem when COVID started. Our individuals were at home and they had no way to communicate with the outside world. So we created various virtual programs which filled the need of COVID. But then we also have found that virtual programs made many of our participants more independent. Now participants can stay home, use their laptop or their tablet, sometimes even their phones, and participate in programs that they want to participate in instead of maybe being dragged around to do other family activities. Our social programs is where we really are hitting the mark. Our participants, when COVID hit, like I said, they were driven to their homes and it was hard for them to get out and not able to have those social programs. Many of them regressed. So our social programs have really been key. Our participants will come out, they might do some exercise, they might do an art class, but everything is based around social cues, how to speak to each other, social norms, everything that they missed during COVID, and all those things they need to constantly remember as they move forward. Now, if you have access to our slide, this link goes to the Pierce County Standing Ovation Award Jen Sargent and I won last year, and it was for our virtual programming. And you could say that was the kickstart to this specialized recreation adventure within Reach program. Jen and I, when COVID hit, we started programming on Facebook and we started programming on Zoom, and we were very successful, and that led to Meet Me in the Park, which led to Adventure Within Reach. So I hope you have a minute to check that video out and also get to meet some of our participants. Next, I'd like to introduce Jen Sargent. She's going to talk about one of our most popular programs, Club and Camp Pierce.
Hi there, and thank you so much for again for allowing us to come and speak with you all tonight. I just wanted to go over very briefly Club Pierce and Camp Pierce, and I know those names can be very confusing. They are similar programs. Camp Pierce is a summer day camp that we run as a summer day camp, like during the months of the summer, while Club Pierce runs the remainder of the year, more in terms of the school year. Just a little bit of a clarification on that, because I know those names can be very confusing. The background of Club Pierce, as Jen mentioned earlier, when programming, we had Camp Lots of Fun that had been going for quite a while. And we had what we previously called our companionship program, which provided some recreational activities in the lines of open gym nights and maybe some kind of like an art night. But what we were really looking for, or what our families were really looking for, was more programming geared towards our transition age students. And those are the students that that have graduated from our transition program. So those are the students that are about ages 20, 21. And so by that time, they've already aged out of all of the school programming, and they've aged out of our Camp Lots of Fun, and they had aged out of most of our companionship programming. And they just really, there was nothing there for them. So they were feeling kind of left out. They were at home a lot, kind of watching television, snacking on the couch. And they were really missing all of those ingredients that make a well-rounded life. They were missing out on social activities. They were no longer participating in really true like life skills and taking directions and meeting new people and having new experiences. So parents were concerned about that, and that's where the original concept came for what came first, which was our Camp Pierce, and that was in 2015, the summer of 2015, and it was an enormously successful, far more so than I honestly had thought it was going to be. Caught me a little off guard, but that's okay. That's how we grow. And so at the end of camp, the parents, came back and said, "Gosh, this was amazing. What else can you do for us? We did summer camp, but now we're back in, and everybody is going back to school." And yet our campers, or our participants, our children at this point, they don't have anything to do. What else can you give us? So we went back to the drawing board and came up with a program that was originally called Club TGIF because it met on Fridays, but transitioned into Club Pierce as we grew those dates to multiple times a week. And Club Pierce meets during the week, during the day, and it gives our clubbers this opportunity to really experience a more well-rounded life. They participate in volunteer activities at organizations that we vetted just to ensure that it's appropriate for our group, that it's truly accessible for our group, and that it's something that they can then learn from and grow from. And those volunteer opportunities then transition into becoming opportunities for them to be able to put it on their resume, to take to their job coach and to say, "Hey, I've done this, now maybe I can do this for pay, or maybe I can volunteer on my own outside of Club Pierce and get some more experience." We also spend a lot of time, like I said, learning life skills, and part of that is taking Pierce Transit. And so we learned not just taking the shuttle bus, the smaller the shuttle, but taking large, the real bus, the public transport. We take the Sounder, we've taken the Link, we take multiple different kinds of public transportation just to kind of have that experience, so that our clubbers have the experience of scanning their ORCA card, finding a seat, and behavior that's appropriate on the bus. We take field trips. At least once or twice a month, we're out on a field trip, big field trips. And I say big, but Seattle Aquarium style field trips. And then we do smaller field trips where we're just going to local parks, kind of checking out the scenery, seeing what else is around. And when we're not doing those activities, then we work on kitchen skills. We do arts, we do crafts, we have sports. We're always staying busy, and we are always, always growing and learning. And those are really the goals of it, is to continue learning and to continue having that social experience, to continue the evolving of having a fully rounded life. we hope that Club Pierce, Camp Pierce, and all of our special events can come to UP. We think it would be an awesome opportunity, not only for your participants, but also for us to be able to get in there and to meet new people. We would really enjoy doing that. And we think after speaking with Mr. Cooper, that this would be a great opportunity for your participants and we think we can host it at your community center. And we did tour it earlier this year. It's a great space for this. So we really hope that can work out. And also, as Jen mentioned earlier in her last slide, there was a link at the bottom of it. And there is also a link at the bottom of this particular slide for another standing ovation that we received for our Camp Pierce and Club Pierce programs. So if you have that opportunity, please take a look at that video. It does a really great job of not only explaining the program, I think, but also introducing you to a lot of our clubbers and getting really a firsthand look at what Club Pierce is and what it means.
Thank you, Jen.
Well, thank you very much. Let's see. That brings us.
I had just one more quick thing to say, if that's all right.
Please.
We're really excited at the opportunity of inviting University Place citizens into our program. I feel very confident that if we are able to partner, that you will find we are able to navigate COVID. We go from a virtual format to modified formats to meeting outside and virtual to meeting inside. So we've really worked very hard to meet the needs of not only our participants, but also their families that really rely on us for their respite care. So we already have met a few of your families. We hope to meet more. And I open it up for any other questions if anybody has. If you don't mind, I'm going to minimize the screen so I can see everybody.
That would be just fine, of course. And thank you for a well-done presentation. Appreciate all the information and helping us understand about specialized recreation and the opportunities that it brings and how it can serve and does serve the UP community. We have a few minutes for questions. Council members, let's see, I see that Councilmember Lee has his hand up. And then we'll go to Councilmember Keel and Councilmember McCluskey in that order, please.
This is Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. I think I jumped ahead of a couple people here, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll make it quick. If I understand correctly, the people the citizens in UP who would qualify for this program are not participating now, is that correct?
I want to clarify a couple things. There's not any qualifying diagnosis or application people can go to. We provide recreation for anybody who feels what we offer works for them. And what we hope to do is not only continue to work with the citizens of University Place, but by offering programs within University Place, they have less of a drive. And so that's more of what we're looking to do, is to get into other communities, to make that drive time a little bit less and make participating in our programs a little bit easier, especially for families who might have multiple children or brothers or sisters that they help get where they need to go for these programs.
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for your presentation. This is Councilmember Keel. This program is just fantastic, and I will just share what everybody in council knows, but I'll share with you is that I have a daughter, 32 years old, who participates in a lot of special programs, and probably in I think a few times in some programs run by county as well. So and you answered my first question. That was when you said make available to UP. I was thinking, we're already doing that. We're already doing that. I mean, what does that mean? And so by saying bringing the program into UP, I want to say I'm just jumping up and down happy about that, because I can tell you, my daughter's 32 years old, and I can tell you for 32 years, I wondered why the county didn't have a program inside our city. I mean, shame on you. Okay. So I'm glad that you're making that correction. And so, because we do, 10% of the 1,000 homes that you talked about are coming from UP. It should have been here a long time ago. So I'm happy to have that. So now I've just got a series of questions around resources that you probably already have, but I want to, maybe you don't. So the OSPI, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, has now a bunch of dollars that are in this year into next year that they're making available for recreation. And AWC, Association of Washington City, is going to administer that program. And they put out a call for folks to bring their programs to get funding. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to reach out to the Association of Washington Cities and just Google them and talk to their persons. And so, I mean, it's millions of dollars. And so I was going to share that with our city too, as well, as far as recreation. And there may be, a way that, the city gets money, you guys get money, and we can kind of put it together. And if we're to kind of work that around, I think that would be really, really good as possible. The other thing that you probably do know, that Pierce Transit actually has a program for people with special needs that will allow them to get free or reduced bus passes. You guys have that? Okay, good.
Yeah, we use that program for Club and Camp Pierce, and actually they gave us the curriculum to teach every week. Unfortunately, they're not able to come every week, so they gave us the curriculum and they help us out. And Jen Sargent is diligent about going down and getting the cards locked and loaded and getting all the paperwork.
Great. And I would offer that Sound Transit has a similar type program, maybe not run the same way, but I would reach out to Sound Transit as well, because you mentioned the light rail and other things, and so those are other programs that you can get resources for your campers. So anyway, that's it for me. I want to say thank you. I'm really excited about this. I don't see any downside for our citizens to participate in this. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. I wrote down all your suggestions and I'll make sure we follow up on those.
Thank you. Very good. And of course, as president of the State Association of Washington Cities, Councilmember Keel knows his programs well, and as chair of Sound Transit is also. So appreciate you mentioning those resources. Councilmember McCluskey, I think we're going to finish with your questions and comments.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have just a couple questions. You mentioned that initially this started with a transition program of the 20-21-year-olds to get them off the couch and get so that they will enhance their health and well-being, hopefully their marketability as well in the job market. And you also indicated that it was an inclusive organization, which I'm glad to hear. And so on tag teaming on that, because the community center, to me, I really want that to sustain the doors to be open to seniors. So if a senior is interested, because it sounds like you have a really robust program that is engineered to help. So with transportation to and from wherever the programming is, it appears that you will work with the client to get them to where they need to go, like to your programming and to your organization. Would that work with seniors as well?
I just want to make sure I understand your question. Are you referring to seniors who have disabilities or just the general senior citizen population?
The general senior citizen population typically has some sense of sort of disability. just from the essence of aging. You know, when you reach a certain age, you know, you always have those underlying conditions, whether they are a disability or not. I think that is subjective. You know, you look at me and you're thinking, oh, you know, I can get around pretty good. Typically I can, but you know, there are some, like if I were to die of COVID, they would give them the excuse that, oh yeah, she had those underlying conditions. So I would like that, if, because the seniors in our community extremely need programming such as yours that you're offering to the special needs. I know it may not be totally in your wheelhouse, but if you can tweak that a little bit to be a little more inclusive, because typically seniors are on the fringe. You know, they are sometimes forgotten, and they need that connectivity. And I think, and I know they will do well with people that are, you know, have limited abilities that your program offers. You know, some of the things that I noticed on your website that you do, seniors would love to do as well, to be engaged socially and to enhance their health and well-being, and the encouragement to get them out the door and not be so fearful of the world and how they are moving around, so that if they can have some sort of help, you know, just to keep those doors open to our seniors, just to kind of keep that would really be my golden carrot to loving this program even more. And the other aspect of it is, what is the, I know you're coming to the city to ask for a subsidy, and was that at the, because of each participant? So if you grow their participation, then we will grow the subsidy, correct? Or is it going to be each year is going to be just a set amount each year?
Right, that's a great question. So right now what we're doing is trying to get the municipalities, it's basically a participant hour. So we would bill you, and it's based on the actual participant hours of your residents. What we're trying to do is say that we're estimating that 15,000, that you should budget for 15,000 a year, so you have that money set aside, but we would bill you quarterly for the actual time used, and it's at $8 an hour.
Okay, and you market to University Place citizens?
We do, but we would. So that would be a part of the partnership, is working with Mr. Cooper to get the word out, letting your community know that these services are available to them, and they're available very close at your center.
Okay, and how many days a week during the day are you visualizing the use of the facility?
So I'll leave that to Jen and Jen. Maybe they have a better idea, but I think that's also up for discussion. So it would depend on what you currently have in that building, what you guys would like to see. I know for sure we've talked to Mr. Cooper about doing summer camp there, and also at least being there 1 day per week. But again, that can increase depending on the availability of the center.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback off that. We would love to dedicate 1 day a week to have camp, or Club Pierce, I should say. I get myself confused with all the Pierces. We were hoping to be in the community center on Mondays, because we will be in other parts of the county on other days. We have other one-time events that pop up that we would like to do in the evening, and that would be based on when the community center was open, and as well as once we start to communicate to your public, like, what do you like, then we can start to program that a little bit more. And then we would love to have at least 1 full week of Camp Pierce out of the community center, possibly even more based on the need for camp this summer. And also, we also have to remember staffing is always a big key to all of this. And your citizens can always jump on to a virtual call if that is what they prefer, a virtual class. And there's no closer location than your own house to participate in an activity. So that's what we hoped to start off with. And obviously we hope to grow as we see more and more citizens of University Place come and visit us.
All right, well, very good. Well, thank you. So
And we have, Mayor Pro Tem,
yes.
I just want to clarify procedural that this will come back for another study session, correct? Because we were talking
yes,
the
we
subsidy
certainly
of recreation and
right. We don't have a specific proposal in front of us, and we don't have this, of course, for action this evening either. So we need more information if we were to move forward, certainly. So.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. Now, Councilmember Figueroa, I was trying to close out comments, but if you, and I also wanted to give Gary Cooper, as the gentleman who started this conversation tonight, a last word as well. Would you still like to speak, Councilmember Figueroa? I see your hand is up, so I take that as a yes. So.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As you bring, when this gets pegged for a future study session, I'd assume that we probably need several. There's a lot of questions and information that has to be thought through here. One of them that came into mind is Councilmember McCluskey. You know, I want to separate this specialized recreation from senior citizen activities is one that we need to really discuss. The other one would be taken on in UP what should be occurring for Pierce County and taking that tab. I'm very cautious about adding to our budget. If it's truly all of UP, that's something different. But when you have these camps and other things, I would want to know if outside participants outside of UP would participate in that. And if that's true, then I'm questioning, are we supplementing, subsidizing Pierce County activities for others living outside? So again, there's a lot of different things that need to be really thought through here before, I know this is a great program. I agree with a lot of my peers, but again, from a business standpoint, I want to be very careful that this is not a rolling out a red carpet saying whatever goes. We're going to hand it out to you. There's a lot of discussion here to be had.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. I appreciate that. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, and I'll be real brief. The folks from Pierce County put on a great presentation tonight, but they're too polite to get to the nuts and bolts of it, which is Pierce County residents, University Place residents currently participate in these programs. For the last several years, Pierce County has been providing the subsidy. It's a 50-50 subsidy, and they've been covering the UP residents for the last several years. The crux of this is request for the $15,000 is the city of UP willing to set that cost that the county's currently been paying for UP residents? This isn't, while countywide is invited to participate, we're talking about UP residents. So we can provide more information detailed on that next time around, but I just thought I had to throw it out there because I knew they were too embarrassed to start asking for money. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, and appreciate that. And thank you to our friends with Pierce County. You did a great job in presenting the program and really helped us understand things well. We will have, I think, some more questions.
Mayor Tim, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I thought Nisha wanted to say one more thing.
Yes, Gary put it really nicely, but I just wanted to ensure that you knew that we would only charge back for the folks that are actually residents of UP. So we have other partnerships that we are finalizing with folks like Puyallup, Sumner, Key Penn, and we're basically using zip codes in order to make sure that we are charging correctly into the jurisdiction. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. The other, I think, good thing that I actually forgot to mention is that we were awarded a Cdbg grant, and that grant would help you for the first year. It would actually would cover your cost. So the participant $8 an hour would actually come out of that grant for the first year. So there would really be no cost to, we don't see a cost to UP that first year. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Some very good information, Nisha. Appreciate that. And again, thank you for the good presentation that helps us all. We'll be looking at this further and taking it on to another agenda. Thank you all. And with that, I think we're going to move on to our next item, which is about the Senior Center discussion. Appreciate it. All right. Take care. With the Senior Center, we have Matt Kaser, our city attorney, to help us discuss it and the upcoming lease renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Matt Kaser, City Attorney. Think of this as a tag along and continuation from a slightly different vein. From the last discussion that we had with Pierce County Parks, this is scheduled to be the first of a couple of study sessions that we have related to the Senior Community Center. And as we go through this, I want the council to kind of keep an overarching mindset on this. And this is kind of carries through from the last conversation, which is how would you like to best leverage your asset? And that sounds very bureaucratic and blah, but the asset that we're talking about is the community center. I think you're all familiar with it, located there off Grandview, 2,500 square feet or thereabouts. The last time council had extended discussion on this was, if you take a trip back into the Wayback Machine, back in late 2016, as council was looking at what do we do with this, and the city ended up leasing it to Community Connection Place, which currently holds the lease. If you take that trip back into the Wayback Machine and you take a look at press coverage related back then, and I was looking at this even just before the meeting, the TNT identifies this as essentially an 11th hour save of the community center, with the group out of nowhere coming in to continue those sort of services. Those are words from the TNT, not my words, to continue to provide those services. And the city at the time executed a five-year lease, with 2 5-year terms. And part of the reason why we're having this discussion tonight is that the first of those terms is set to expire here in the next couple of months at the end of the year. And a decision has to be made. What does council want to do with the asset? And I think it's important to put a couple of things into context. Part of it is, what terms did the city agree to with respect to the lease? What are the key terms? What are the terms by which we are bound by as we look towards the future? And really, what is the council's range of options? And for council discussion, what are the considerations that council is looking at as we march forward and look at those next several steps in the use of the asset? The lease terms, we supplied a copy of the lease with the council packet. There's really 3 main terms that I want council to focus on. The first is the length of the lease itself. As I stated, it's 2 5-year terms running from January 1st, 2017. That first 5-year term expires on January 1st, 2022. So that's only a few short months away. There is then a mutual 5-year option from there. And when I say mutual, what that means is both the city and CCP must say, yes, we agree to extend it. We want to renew it for an additional 5-year period for a total of 10 years. The second term I want to call council's attention to is the dollar amount. It is rented for $1 a month. However, part of that $1 a month also includes the obligation to pick up utilities as well as relevant taxes and other collateral type financial matters. And the third thing that I want to draw council's attention to is the use of that. The use of it is spelled out fairly generically within the lease, that it shall be operated consistent with CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Guidelines, related back to an agreement which the city executed going even further back in 1997. We supplied a near complete copy of that lease. It was pointed out to me before the meeting that there's one page missing from that lease. But in looking at that, that doesn't necessarily change the framework that we're going to talk to you about. And the CDBG program, I think, has many of you.
Monitor is flashing.
Am I coming through in chambers?
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, am I coming through in chambers, or is there
You are coming through
issue?
in chambers. So we had another
right,
distraction here, my fault.
Which is designed towards primarily low-income and generally disadvantaged populations and providing services to those individuals. Those include senior services, similar to the program that we just heard from Pierce County Rec, youth services, and other related services. The agreement that the city executed back in 1997 still is arguably in effect, and it does carry an obligation to use that facility or to hold on to it for a period of 25 years, which also expires at roughly 14 months from now in November of 2022. So you have a couple of these deadlines that are kind of coming along. The lease that we also have with CDBG, with the Community Connections Place also has a provision in there that if they cease to use it for senior purposes, and go from there. But it doesn't otherwise obligate them to say, well, you have to do this, you have to do that. You just have to, don't jeopardize the CDBG agreement that we have in effect and continue to offer it for senior services. So as council goes forward, there's a number of considerations that are out there. Council's had a series of discussions over the course of the last 18 months related to recreation. We just concluded one part of that discussion just with the prior speaker. Council's been fairly clear that it's not interested in getting back into the direct supplier of recreation, but it has indicated a willingness to partner with other community type groups, whether it's a public-private partnership, turn the asset over, such as what we've done with CCP or the like. You heard during the public comment portion that of tonight's meeting that there is a new group forming that is looking at a needs assessment within the community. To what extent council wishes to base that as a consideration remains within the purview of council. Going forward, and the good news is council doesn't have to make any parts. This is the first of a couple council meetings and council study sessions related to this. But in looking at what you want to do with the asset, you know, if you're sort of putting this out on the whiteboard, what choices do you have? And looking at it, there's really 3, maybe 4, depending on how you're counting it. The first is you can just simply say,
Okay, Matt is frozen there, and we seem to be working through a technical difficulty. So,
am I still coming through?
You had frozen for a moment. You're back on now, as are the rest of the council members, as IT is or technical folks are working through this. But I think you're good, Matt. You can pick it back up, I believe.
Okay. All right. So, as I was saying, I don't know to what extent I was getting the breakup there in chambers or on the live feed. You get that option. That's something that council can do. You have the opportunity to let the option effectively lapse and to have the discussion, what do you want to do from there? Whether that includes an RFP process.
Matt, we've got some continuing issues there. Sorry about that. So if you were talking about the options we have available, perhaps we can try this once again.
Okay. All right, I got 2 options down. I don't know to what extent I got to 3. The third option is to take sort of a blend of the 2. Obviously, it would require a renegotiation to not maybe a full 5-year term with CCP, but are they willing to provide this on some sort of other basis, a 1 or 2 year extension while we talk about this? The third consideration is you can, or fourth, I guess, is you could let it go dark. I'm not advocating that, particularly in light of our CDBG agreements, but if you're looking at that, that's something you can do too. As you're going through that council level discussion, I think there's just a couple of other things I want to hit on just before I'd be quiet and yield to questions. As you heard with the prior discussion, there does seem to be some interest out there within the community of the opportunity to co-locate, whether it's somebody who's doing it directly under contract with us, with an outside service provider. To what extent council would like to see that, or with other community-related groups. Also, are there other council-related needs? Council has infrequently raised the idea that we don't have enough meeting room space out there. Is that something that council wants to do with respect to the community center? I'll leave that question to council. Let me wrap up with this. Obviously, from a staff perspective, we're not looking for a decision on anything tonight. Obviously, you have 2 council members absent, and you still have other pieces of the conversation that still need to be had. But sort of give you a preview of coming attractions, as I stated in my opening, this is the first of a couple study sessions. We have extended an invitation to CCP so you can hear directly from them at the next council meeting. I don't have confirmation whether they've accepted that invitation yet or not, obviously to be seen. And then we do have penciled in for that first council meeting in October, a further discussion. So with that, to the extent that there's questions that we can address at this point in time, I'm happy to stand for questions, but I'll otherwise turn it back to council.
Very good, Matt. And before we raise those questions, Matt, could you just by title tell us the 4 options, not the explanation, just give them a title.
Let's call it extend, RFP/letter of interest, renegotiate with CCP, go dark.
Okay, thank you. Articulate those since there was some breakup. And with that, council, do you have some questions that we can get on the table? Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Matt, and so you are indicating that we could have a hybrid approach to the extension of the lease in order to allow either a transition or to look at an RFP process, or even to look at maybe a CCP blended services with maybe Pierce County Parks and whatever other entities could be, so that, you know, we could puzzle in so that the community center can be busy all the time, all hours, and maybe having a meeting center at night. You know, I'm just brainstorming, you know, I'm not, so is that what you're indicating that we could do if
you could do that? It would require us obviously to negotiate via a new agreement with CCP. Instead of a second 5-year term, it would be under this hypothetical, say a 2-year type deal. I'm just plugging numbers in here, and maybe you want to throw in an option in there, assuming that we can agree to terms, and hold back portions of the community center for just to use the numbers that the prior presenters talked about, a day a week plus during the school year, plus 1 or 2 weeks during the summer months. And if you wanted to set up minimum service levels to say, you know, you provide a minimum of X number of hours for senior services per week or something. I mean, you could do that. And if that's something that council's interested in, we could obviously take, and if there was a consensus from council, we could take that back and start negotiations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always interested in more options to have a robust and viable programming growth that meets the needs of especially the seniors in our city. I don't want the doors to be closed. They do use the center Monday through Friday. There's a limited programming going through there currently right now, and the Catholic Community Services are providing. They can't do a hot lunch per whatever regulations that they're under, but they are providing lunches so the seniors could eat together in a sense of community every Friday. And I don't want to lose that those services there. And as Councilmember Figueroa mentioned earlier, this is a very complex entity that we're talking about, you know, the programming, the entity, the place. And I think it's going to take a lot longer than 3 months that we have left. And also, to the fairness of Community Connection Place, you know, if we were to not extend the lease, which they know that could be a possibility, I would like to give them a longer grace of time to transition their services if they're so interested in moving it. And so 3 months is not time to really do that. You know, they have before and after care, there's senior programming, you know, they provide food. There's a lot of essential services that are managed out of that site. So I think we need, as a council, to be sensitive to all of that, and to whatever transition that we think about at the end of the day. I think I would like to have at least another year to put it all together and to figure out what is the good fit for our city. If we're looking at going back into our funding sources from the city, having a discussion about that. I'm not no pro or con either way. There's just all those different options too. But bottom line for me, I don't want to lose senior services out of our city and transitioning into a place that the seniors in our city do not have anywhere where to go. However, to get into a programming that could be more robust, that they could have other opportunities, not only for seniors, but for special needs. And so that's where I'm at today on this lease. You know, we're talking about September. We're now another study session or two. I think we should look at maybe a short-term lease extension to be fair to the users as well as the provider.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Figueroa, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Matt, just some real quick back and forth Q&A. Can we do month to month?
You could probably do month to month with a conversation with them. That assumes that they'd be willing to go month to month.
Okay, the reason I'm saying that, and I agree with Councilmember McCluskey, maybe short term, I will be thinking that might give us time to work out some of the kinks for a new agreement. I definitely lean toward a new agreement. I think a one shoe size given to this one organization for that. I don't think that it's been leveraged the way we could leverage it, because we have other community players that could use that. We saw one of them just here earlier, might be another one that we talked about, and maybe even city needs to really maximize this building, this location. And but yet I do agree that if there's some services that this entity is providing that we don't want to lose. So I'm thinking that we should provide some time. I don't think that I think a year is too long, you know, but, you know, even if it's like 3 months extensions at a certain time, with the understanding that we're trying to figure out how this new agreement may allow them to work a schedule that would allow us to fit other players. On top of all that, I really would like us to think about how maybe this agreement with one player, and since this player has utilized this building for a year, is being the facilitator, kind of the manager of, you know, they agree to share this building with other entities that we have agreed upon with that building, and they supervise and open up and close it or whatever, all these other things. And where I'm leading with this, guys, my peers, is that when we're talking about multiple identities, that means in and out, all kinds of players. Now, all of a sudden, I can just see it. The administration asking for a senior citizen building supervisor, and then an assistant. And then all of a sudden, we're getting back to more staffing for something like this. And that's troubling for me. And so I'm thinking that if we go in this route, maybe we should just choose one entity, maybe the one that we have now, and let them be the ones that is the caretaker of this building with the other entities. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, your turn.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, thank you. I see this as broken down into two components. One is the services, and the second is the maintenance of the building. That's an old building. Under the current lease, at least that's the way the lease is written, the CCP has to maintain that building. I see that as a problem because the person who was paying for the maintenance in that building, which is going to probably become increasingly costly, is going to want to have total control of what's happening in it. So that's just one issue. The second one is, I think, in all fairness to CCP, I don't think they've ever been given definitive guidance on just what the city expected them to provide. And so therefore, it's hard for me to be critical of the services that they do provide, because I'm not sure that we ever gave them exactly what we wanted them to do. So I think that to get this thing resolved in several months isn't going to work. It isn't fair to CCP. Now, all along, if CCP doesn't go along with this, then of course it's a moot issue. They have to agree to everything that we're talking about with the extension. So, and also I think that we need to look really carefully too at the services that they do provide. COVID has really taken a toll on them with respect to what they provide. So I guess my comment is that it's a two-component problem. One is the maintenance of the building, and then the other is the services that are provided. And if one organization wants to take that package on as a whole, that's fine, as long as they know what they're getting into. I guess the other option would be where the city maintains the maintenance on the building. That's another option, I guess. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Let's see. Otherwise, Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You know, I just been really listening very intently to all of you speak and just trying to get a feel for, and really trying to help kind of codify my thoughts. I mean, what I remember about our conversation when we first put all this together was that we were very much interested in making sure that we as a city had a recreation program, knowing that we didn't have any money to make that happen. We had some physical resources, a building, we had some vehicles. Remember the vehicles that we had that were driving people around? We had some stuff, and we put together a deal, which I think is a great deal for the organization that's there now, where they've got a building, you know, that that always goes off at the wrong time. They had a building that that they could access, and they were only paying $1 a month, and so that's a great deal for them, right? And the great deal for us was that we had an organization that was going to step up to plate to offer services, recreation services that we couldn't afford to offer. So it was the classic win-win situation. Now, almost 5 years later, we really don't have any money to do this either. Still, we still have a facility, but now we have some other interests. And so I don't have this fully, and I'm glad we have more time to think about it, but what's rattling in my head now is this construct of how do we continue to leverage this win-win situation that we have with an organization that in my estimate is doing a good job. They're providing a great service to some seniors. They've got, all the things that we know that they're doing now. It's been great. How do we enhance that, right? We heard tonight from some other people that might want to do, some work with us. We've got to work that out. Part of working that out might be to what Councilmember Figueroa was saying is that we still set up the organization that we're working with now as the lead agency and maybe the purveyor of the work in the building, but allow the county to come in underneath them and work with them under the overarching, the City of University Place umbrella. And we be the brokers of these relationships and do it as council members that are doing things that are going to be best for our citizens. And then I think you overlay the money, and yes, it all comes down to money. You overlay the money that potentially we can get from the state and AWC that I talked about that now the county is going to go look at, because I think there's money there. We as a city can get money for our citizens from this program, and so can the county. And so you take now this new money with this new situation under the old guise. I think there's a win-win-win now situation there. Again, that's just me right at the top of my head. I haven't spent time to try to figure all that out, but that's the construct of what I'm thinking that we need to look at going forward.
Okay, Councilman.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem.
Very good, and thank you for the thoughts, all of you. So I hear some good commonality, not identical, but commonality in there. I wanted to add my 2 cents briefly. One is just to recognize that commonality. I'm there as well to see if we can increase services to our citizens. That there seems to be a way to put a win-win-win together potentially. The other is there needs to be, at least in my mind, a sense of fairness. We've had the folks in there now. We are getting short and giving them a reasonable amount of notice. If we were to make a sudden decision tomorrow, that might be enough notice, but that's not by far. We're quite a ways from that situation. So if there's a way to be reasonable about a notice period, if we were to have a large change, then I would be. I think that's probably enough for now. We're almost on time, and I think we've all had a chance to say our piece and to hear some good information in the course of it. Matt, anything from you, your side of things before we start?
The 2 things that I would just reemphasize to council is obviously this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of the conversation. CCP is tentatively slated to come in and talk to council on the next council meeting, waiting for that invitation back. I think it may be otherwise prudent to generally hold the powder, as it were, until we have the opportunity to hear from them. To one of the prior points in terms of the expectation chat, that might be a good time to have that dialogue with CCP and going forward. The second thing I would also urge, and it kind of piggybacks off on the holding powder, is if you're looking at some sort of extension, I would tell you that a 1 month to month is extraordinarily short, and it doesn't seem to fit that fairness mold. But then the question is, what then does? And I think it's important to hear what they have to say together with the needs that we're talking about going forward and reevaluating that. So with that, I'll turn it back to council.
Very good, and thank you. We'll get back to it on our upcoming agendas. And now I would like to invite Police Chief Primo to come forward and please to give us an update on policing, and lots occurring there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Good evening. I'd like to start by saying thank you for taking the time to have this discussion and learn about some of the legislative impacts that around police reform that are we're facing here in University Place and across the state. Over the last 6 months, I've had the opportunity to attend numerous trainings, webinars, panel discussions with law enforcement leaders and legal advisors across the state. My presentation will not be the hours and hours that I spent doing those. I've tried to condense this down into what I think are two of the key factors that really impact public safety in relation to some of these laws. As Councilmember Keel noted earlier, there's obviously some work that needs to be kind of done on clarifying and providing some guidance from the state around some of these laws. As I mentioned during those trainings and presentations that I attended, it's hard to even get legal advisors to agree on some of the interpretations of these laws. So there's certainly some challenges around those. If Amanda, if you want to bring up the presentation, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as you remember, back in May, the governor signed several bills into law related to police administration, our authority, and investigations. Next slide. Here's a list of those bills that were signed and their effective date. I'm not going to cover each one of those. I highlighted the two areas there, House Bill 1054 and 1310. Those are the two that I was going to focus on tonight. Again, these are the ones that really impact policing out on the street. Go ahead, the next slide. Before we dive into those, I think it's important, I think there's been a lot of questions from the public in general. They hear about, maybe a news clip about these changes and the police can't do this and why they can't do that. I felt it's important to give everyone a little bit of an understanding of some of the terms that you'll see in these and what they mean, and a little bit of an understanding on how police authority works in terms of contacting individuals and our authority to detain physically during an investigation. So the first one you see is called a social contact. What that basically means is police officers are just like every other citizen. We can go up to anybody and talk to anybody and say hi and hello, just in any type of context. What it means though is during a social contact, that person has every right to just not engage with the police whatsoever. And they can walk away from that conversation. The police have no authority to detain them, whether physically or by a show of force or anything else. Next is what's called reasonable suspicion, and it's more commonly referred to as a Terry stop detention. So under a U.S. Supreme Court case, Terry v. Ohio, the courts established police have the authority to detain individuals who are suspected of criminal activity, and what they called crime is afoot. So it's just happened, is happening, or about to happen. Police can detain the individuals to investigate their activity, and they can do this by force. So if the person refuses to cooperate with the police, we can use physical force to detain them. That means, grab them, place them into handcuffs, and trying to investigate what is going on at that point. The next level is probable cause. That's a common term that you'll hear. What probable cause is a level of evidence that says that we can now arrest this person for a particular crime. So it's an amount of evidence that's higher than that reasonable suspicion level that says a particular person committed a particular crime, and there's evidence to support that, and the elements of that crime have been satisfied. Now, this is still only a level that allows us to make the arrest, and that means arrest, take to jail, and then a prosecutor would review it and decide if charges are to be rendered against that person in court. It is not reasonable doubt, which again is another, that is a trial level of evidence. So as everyone knows, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is what a jury needs to come to that conclusion during a trial. That is not what is, that level is not required for the arrest of an individual. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first bill is House Bill 1310. This is the use of force bill. And what it says is that physical force can only be used when there is probable cause to make an arrest, effect an arrest, prevent an escape, or protect against an imminent threat of bodily injury to the officer, another person, or person whom force is being used. It also has an element in there, what's called the duty of reasonable care, which mandates certain de-escalation tactics prior to force being used. I put some asterisks along those first couple of bullet points because these are things that law enforcement, certainly Pierce County Sheriff and UPPD, have been doing for years. These are just a part of our training and tactics that we've used. Some might be more so in the last few years, like including crisis intervention and mental health professionals. Those are things that have really only been used more frequently in the last few years. Another element that they added to that duty of reasonable care is that the officer must consider leaving the area if there's no threat of imminent harm and no crime in progress, or it has just occurred or about to occur. So that's now a piece of that de-escalation that officers really were never really faced with having to make a decision about leaving a situation as they were facing out on the streets. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the other area I like to educate people on is physical force. Now, under the law does not describe what physical force technically means. The Criminal Justice Training Center for Washington State did provide their definition of what physical force is. I know from my conversations with citizens, I think a lot of times when they talk about force and police, they tend to think it's either deadly force or some sort of, very aggressive injuries type of force, when in reality, force is just simply any technique or tactic that can cause or likely to cause transient pain or injury. So really, it's the idea of going hands-on with a person, even from a simple grab them by the arm, you need to come with me, kind of an escort pull on the arm, or they're resistant and you're using their arm to take them to the ground and put them into handcuffs. Again, there could be just very minor. Again, transient just means that it is a very temporary, a minor type of pain or injury. So physical force in the definition of 1310 means any simple use of force could be considered physical force, and therefore you're required to have probable cause. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about some scenarios. And again, the challenges of 1310. This is where you kind of start to see what the differences are between that reasonable suspicion element that we operated under and before 1310, and now that we have to operate under probable cause. So the scenario is someone calls 911 and they hear a male and a female fighting next door. The female is yelling for help, and then things go quiet. The male is seen by the witness running out the front door down the street. A description of that subject is provided to the 911 dispatcher. The officer arrives in the area and sees the male subject as it was described, walking down the street. So the question is, can the officer contact that individual? The officer certainly can. There is nothing in the new law that says we cannot make contact with anybody. What changes is whether or not that subject is uncooperative. At that point, we have reasonable suspicion based on the description provided by the witness, the proximity to the location where this incident is occurring. A call to 911, we are to presume that this person is telling the truth about what is going on. So we have reasonable suspicion that there is a crime. Some sort of an assault is probably occurring. So we have enough under reasonable suspicion to detain that person and to investigate whether or not there is a crime. Under 1310, if the subject then runs or does not cooperate with the officer cannot use force or chase that individual. So we have not established probable cause to be able to do that at that point. What it does require in this scenario would be getting to the house first, ignoring the individual walking down the street, maybe get to the house, contact the victim, verify that there actually was a crime that was committed, get the victim to provide some sort of description that matches what we got from a witness. That would be more information that would then take us to the next level of probable cause to then detain that individual, whether they wanted to cooperate or not. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Another issue that's come up is about mental health and welfare checks. You may have seen in the news.
Excuse me, Chief, for just a second.
Okay.
Just a quick procedural issue. Do you want questions now or at the end?
It's totally up to you, Mayor Pro Tem. If we want to take a pause and ask questions as we go, I'm totally fine with that.
My own inclination at this point is to hold them until the end, if we may. So, if that'll work.
That works for me.
Great, thank you.
So you may have seen some questions around mental health, the response by police to mental health calls. Maybe some agencies that have said that they're not going to be able to respond to those anymore. Again, there's nothing in the law, the new laws, that say that the police cannot respond to any type of call, to include mental health calls. The challenge that we're being faced with is some of the language, again, is about whether or not we can use force in those situations. And again, I remind you, use of force is simply grabbing onto somebody into a minor situation that could cause transient pain. So imminent threat requires that the subject has the present and apparent ability, opportunity, and intent to immediately cause death or serious injury. So in this scenario, we're talking about an individual that's maybe in the park, running around yelling things and making odd comments. They're maybe partially clothed. To the witnesses, clear to be having some sort of mental health episode. There's nothing that indicates that they've committed a crime at this point. They're simply having some sort of mental health breakdown. Can the police respond? They certainly can. As I put in here, this is a situation where we might be able to use our co-responder to respond with patrol. They are mental health professionals that we have working with law enforcement here in Pierce County. But if we were to respond, could we force that person to detain them into getting a mental health evaluation or a transport to the hospital? And the answer is no. Like I said, there is no imminent threat of, injury or anything to themselves or to others at that point. We can certainly talk with them, do our best to negotiate with them, but in the end, if they don't want to cooperate, the officers would have to leave that person there. So then, this also then brings up the question about the duty of reasonable care. As I mentioned, it has an element of that the officers need to leave the area if there's no crime committed or no imminent threat. Some have interpreted that to say whether or not you should go from the beginning. Because the initial call didn't indicate, again, no crime, didn't indicate any imminent threat. The presence of law enforcement could escalate the situation depending on that person's mental health and their response to a uniformed officer. So that has also been brought up as a question as to whether or not police should be responding from the beginning. Because if the officer then did show up and maybe that antagonized the person in some way, and then that person then either assaulted the officer, went after them, or went after somebody else, they could see that might have been violating that portion of 1310 that says the officer should be leaving the scene. Again, that's just some people's interpretations. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So shifting over to 1054, which is the police tactics bill. There were several elements within it, but really this was the component of 1054 that I thought really impacted police operations out on the street and can impact public safety in general for our community. What it says is there is probable cause to believe that, this is relation to vehicle pursuits. It says that vehicle pursuits are unlawful unless there is probable cause to believe the person in the vehicle has committed or is committing a violent offense, a sex offense, or an escape. Or there is reasonable suspicion the person in the vehicle is committing or has committed or is committing a DUI offense. And then, of course, there's other elements. The pursuit is necessary for the purpose of identifying and apprehending the person, and the person poses an imminent threat to the safety of others. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, this is another element where probable cause was thrust into the decision-making or the authority of the police in taking actions out on the streets. So in this scenario, you have a drive-by shooting that just occurred and the witnesses saw the vehicle. They provided the description of that vehicle to 911. The suspect vehicle is described as a newer orange Dodge Challenger. But there's no description of the occupants. As you know, with a drive-by shooting, maybe late at night, you can't necessarily see the people inside the car. You might hear and see muzzle flashes from the car, and as the car speeds away, you get a description of the car. The officers arrive in the area, they spot that car matching that description about a mile from the scene. Can the officers attempt to stop the car? Yes, they can. Again, back to the thing, there's nothing in the laws that say we can't take an action, make a stop, or contact an individual, or respond to the call in general. If the car takes off, can they pursue? No, they cannot pursue. There has been no probable cause for the occupants of that vehicle. At this point, we had reasonable suspicion that the vehicle was just involved in a violent crime, but not probable cause for an occupant. We don't even know who's driving that car at that point. So again, that creates that challenge. There's also an issue with stopping a car. Could we stop the car? The question was yes. And let's say the car then pulls over. And now what happens if the occupants of the car are not cooperative? We still do not have probable cause at this point to use any type of force. So there's questions and tactics around how do we just try and sit there in a kind of a stalemate as officers respond to the scene and see if we can get enough to generate probable cause on an individual. It just, again, creates some challenges when we lose that reasonable suspicion element that gives us that authority to detain individuals, whether they want to cooperate with the officers on the scene or not. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's another scenario for you. You arrive home, find a truck in your driveway, and a male subject walks out the front door with a TV in hand. Subject jumps in the truck and speeds off. You call 911, provide a description of the truck, and an officer arrives in the area and sees the truck. Again, can the officer attempt to stop the truck? Yes. Can the officer pursue this truck? The answer is no. This is a scenario where there potentially could rise to PC for that for the driver, because we had a witness give us a description of the driver, description of the truck, and it's the proximity to the house. So that we have a little bit more elements of evidence that could rise to probable cause. However, residential burglary does not fall within the acceptable crimes of 1054 for which a pursuit could happen. And that means, what is a vehicle pursuit? This is at any time where a vehicle is driving in some kind of a reckless manner to evade pursuing police. So a pursuit could be a matter of a couple of blocks to sometimes they can last for minutes on end, but it still just generates the fact that we can attempt to stop the vehicle, but if it starts to take off in any type of high rate or in a reckless manner to evade the arrest, it then becomes a pursuit, and officers are not authorized to continue following. Go ahead and go to the next one. I'm sharing this with you. This is from the Sheriff's Department's pursuit policy. And the reason I share this is I want people to understand that pursuits have always been governed by case law and through the courts, that we've always had factors to consider. A lot of these factors are included in 1054 as well, but these have always been in place. Just because a person runs from the police in a vehicle for whatever crime they're committing doesn't automatically mean that we chase them for whatever reason. We have all these factors that we have to consider at the time of the incident to decide whether or not the need to apprehend outweighs the danger of that pursuit. So these are things that we've been considering for some time. I didn't want people to think that, you know, that 1054 created a pursuit policy where no one really had one in before 1054, when in fact there was pursuit policies and again case law that helped guide a lot of this through the courts. Go ahead, next slide. And I'm almost done. So how does this change our police services? Like I've said multiple times, nothing in the new laws prohibit us from responding to any type of call. However, it does fundamentally change our authority, and therefore it can change how we respond to some calls. And in some calls, this might mean that the officers don't even respond in a certain way that I think people are used to seeing. For example, you know, maybe that welfare check of a mentally ill person that's just walking down the sidewalk. You know, in the past, we might have engaged that individual to try and talk with them. Maybe now the officers are going to just observe from a distance to see what their actions are, to see if even contacting them is the right step. Again, we don't think that citizens need to, you know, worry about these laws and deciding whether or not they call 911. That's law enforcement's job, is to determine, based on the information that they've been provided through 911, as to what the appropriate response should be. And sometimes, like I said, it's the officers may just respond to the area and evaluate from there as to what the next steps would be. I kind of alluded to this, so that some of these challenges are going to be around increasing the difficulty of identifying suspects. So I think the DV situation, or at least the assault with the male and the female, you know, that's a situation where the officers would have to let that individual go, then go to the house and then get information from a victim, and then try to, you know, try to apprehend that individual at a later time. You know, maybe this is going to involve additional resources. More cases might be going to investigators to try and follow up on. We're going to need to be responding to the scene of the crime probably faster and with more people. You know, a lot of times in police, when we have, thinking about a lot of crimes that have just occurred, or we get that call from 911, a lot of officers they're looking for the suspect. So let's say the robbery just occurred and it ran out the store and headed northbound on Orchard. Officers are going to be thinking about trying to locate that suspect while they're responding to the area. Excuse me. So that mindset is going to have to change a little bit, where we're really got to get to the scene and establish that PC as fast as we can. Because if we do come across an individual, we want to have that there, because if the individual doesn't cooperate, we're just going to be letting them walk away anyway. So, and then one last slide for me. So moving forward, again, law enforcement will adapt. I've been in law enforcement for 28 years. There's been numerous types of changes throughout my time around our tactics, case law, you know, how we conduct investigations. We've done it through training, resources, like I mentioned, in terms of co-responders. I mean, those weren't even an option when I started years ago. So I think law enforcement will adapt. I'm hopeful that there will be some review and possible changes to some of these in the future legislative sessions. But regardless, we still have, you know, a duty to serve our community, and we're going to do it the best that we can under those. The rules have just changed, and we're going to do our best to serve our community under the rules and laws of the state of Washington. So I know there's probably a few questions, so I'll go ahead, and that was the end of my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief Primo, and thank you for your observations there and a chance to hear a bit about what's going on. It's a very complex issue and one that's evolving, but in time we'll have some more answers. But right now, I'm sure we have some council questions, and I know Councilmember Keel has a question to start us off with. So.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And Chief, thank you again for your presentation. And I do thank you for all the conversations we have and have had on this topic. It is keenly important to our citizens, how we keep them protected, even in the midst of these new laws that are coming about. First off, I want to thank you for making the observation around vehicle pursuits. Because, I was aware of, there's always been those rules around pursuits. And I will tell you that when I hear you talk about, the new laws, and then when you get to this pursuit, you can't pursue, tying them together kind of, it doesn't fit in my mind, because pursuits have always had their own set, and they've been, and how different agencies, from even agencies have different laws on how they pursue and when they're going to pursue. So that's, to me, that isn't germane to the conversation around the new laws, because pursuits have always been their thing. And so trying to tie them together, makes my eyebrow go up like, well, why are we doing that? Since that's, it shouldn't be together. So, but even aside from that point, you made some points here that I think is something that I want to talk with you more about, and actually have our AWC lobbyists talk about, because as I mentioned earlier, the interest on the part of AWC for all cities in town, all 281 cities and towns in our state, is to make the laws better and have more clarity, so that law enforcement can be clear about what it is that they should be doing or under these new laws. And we said all along that first out of the chute, the law is not going to be perfect, because the people that wrote it don't understand the work in the street. And now the people in the street that do the work, now you've had a chance to read it. Now you're saying, here's how it impacts you. So I'm really looking for ways to kind of shore this up. And my last comment, because it's I don't want to say, it's not comical, is not the right word, but it's just probably weird that you have a DV situation and a person's walking away and they're just a couple of steps away, and you know this is the guy, and because they don't want to stop, it just makes no sense that law enforcement has to let them go. I don't believe that was the intent of the law when we wrote the way that we wrote it and the way that it was written. And if that's a loophole, then we need to change that, and maybe it isn't PC, maybe it's reasonable suspicion, that you could hold the person. My thing is put handcuffs on the guy and walk him back to the house and have the conversation. Ask the woman, is this the guy? And if she says, yeah, now you got your probable cause, you know what I mean? And so, to me, that's a no-brainer. And to me, that's the law wasn't intended to let the guy go, or the gal if she's the perpetrator. Stop them, bring them to the thing, have the conversation, and then do your business. Same thing with the car. If you have the description of the car, of course you couldn't see inside the car, but this is the car. Okay, hold them, go ask the questions. Is this the car? All that stuff, and then now instead of letting them go. So that's just based on what and this is the third time I think I've heard you give this presentation. And so my thing is that's kind of what I want AWC to kind of hone in on with the legislators, to kind of bring about some changes in that regard. So my question is, after that preamble, two questions. Is that something that, is something that would kind of help, it seemed like that would be the biggest aid in the work that you're doing if we did those things, one. And two, would you be willing to sit down with some lobbyists to help them figure out how we need to lobby this session to get the changes that we need.
Yeah, thank you for those questions, Councilmember Keel. Number two, I'm happy to sit down with anybody. I really feel that there needs to be more conversation with law enforcement, those that are out there doing the job, to get that message across as to how these things are impacting and what are some of the ideas on how we can make some changes. I think, referencing the way you described, reasonable suspicion and the response to that domestic violence and stuff, that's exactly how we used to do it, right? I mean, that was the thing. We would stop the individual, conduct an investigation right there. Sometimes there's physical evidence and do you live at this address? But I think the challenge that we have when we're trying to create a law, I think that looking at what the legislative body was trying to eliminate, they just don't realize that there's such a gray area when it comes to law enforcement and the operations that happen out on the street. And we wanted to avoid police use of force in certain situations and then created this to try and eliminate that, but not realizing the big impact that it has. So I know that how you're going to be able to get to there, there's just a lot more work that I think that needs to be done to come to that conclusion. Obviously, this was a kind of a perfect storm of a year in the sense that it was a COVID session. I don't think that legislators had as much interaction and study sessions directly with law enforcement specifically to get that. There's a lot of these types of team meetings, not face-to-face conversations that I think in past years that they were able to have to really get a grasp on what we're trying to accomplish. So there's definitely some work ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, very good. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And Councilmember Lee, you're next up. By the way, I'd like to see if we can conclude our conversation at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. Chief, I want to thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. I've got just one question. How many of these co-responders are available, like on a watch or in a day? Or
So currently the co-responder program is run through the Sheriff's Department in a partnership with Multicare. They're actual employees of Multicare. I think the county, there's 6 of them right now, but I believe they got an expansion to get 9 co-responders working. And they work 7 days a week until I think it's 4 a.m. There's a gap. It's not quite 24-hour coverage, but it's pretty close, like in the 20 hours or close range. But they do cover all of Pierce County, all of the cities, and I think they have 2 on at a time, and that's it. So the way they operate is they're a support function for us. So it's still upon the officers to respond to the calls, to make an evaluation that it's safe to bring in a civilian, mental health professional, and then they call them in. Sometimes they know in advance that it's just a call and they'll reach out and see if the co-responder can start heading this way. But it still requires the officer to be there to make sure it's a safe environment for them to do their job as well. So to answer your question, 6 at this point, but I believe they're going up to 9 here very shortly. So
there's not one always available then, probably.
No, not necessarily, no, because certainly they're covering the whole county, even if they were working. And where they're at within the county is another challenge too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, very good, Chief. I, from my perspective, very much enjoyed the comments and a chance to hear your thoughts about this and from the department as well, or the Sheriff's Department and such. It's a very challenging area. It's a challenging issue in itself in terms of how this is needed to come forward as well. And I think we're all trying to make the best sense of it we can and get to the end goal that we want. I know other states have also looked at this and done some things. I've done a fair amount of work in Colorado in the last 14 months, and they also went through some changes there, and they're figuring out how that has unfolded for them in terms of use of force for their police force and some of the standards by which they do that. And for the most part, that seems to have settled down. They seem to have made sense of it and can perform. course, their laws are different than our laws, as every state is, and I can't say that exactly the same. With all of that said, I look forward to us as a larger state community, with the help of AWC and other interested parties, come to some work to perfect this recent change. So, because I think it, with that, I'm going to move us into our next agenda item. I don't see any further hands, and we'll start with Eric's help. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember McCluskey. Did you have something? You're certainly welcome to.
No, I was just saying goodbye to the chief. I concur with all the points that Councilmember Keel had made in regards to having a deeper dive into this and to make sure it is actually proceeding along as it is had intended. Thanks.
With that, I'll invite Eric Visson to come forward and get us up to date with what's happening with the American Rescue Plan Act. Thank you, Eric.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I will, given the hour, try to keep my comments short so you guys can maybe discuss a little bit more. You might recall from your April retreat that we provided you with an initial estimate of what we thought we were going to get from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. We thought it was going to be about 6.5 million, excuse me, 7.4 million. Turned out to be about 9.4 million, 2 million more than we expected, which is good news. So you had the discussion about police and all the challenges faced with that. Here we have a great opportunity. So hopefully we can end the night on a positive thought. So we received 9.4 million. It's going to be divided into two halves, half this year, half next year. We also received a $2.1 million grant for the Leech Creek Sewer Project. My main interest tonight is to make sure that staff is working on the right things. At the retreat, we identified approximately 6.5 million that we would be interested in partnering with the county on in expanding access to sewers throughout the city. There was also some interest in business assistance and a few other items. But the main purpose of tonight's discussion is we're still planning on working with the county on the 6.5 million. They are going through a process where they are identifying a program by which cities would apply, and they describe it as matching city dollars, whereas we describe it as matching county dollars. But in any event, this program they were talking about as being part of their 2022-2023 budget. So they're beginning that process now. Once the council approves a program, then it'll be up to staff to outline all the necessary administrative steps related to that, including the prioritization within the particular potential applicants. So what I'm asking for tonight is, are we still on the right track as it relates to dedicating approximately $6.5 million towards sewers? And then the next biggest thing I want to talk about is business assistance. That was one of the items that you guys had previously discussed. And at the retreat, we only talked about $100,000, and that was a placeholder, not knowing where you guys might stand in, number one, whether you want to do business assistance at all, and number two, if so, what amount were you looking at? So if we can start the discussion with the 6.5 million, I'd appreciate any feedback that you might be able to provide.
Thank you, Eric. And so, council, does anybody want to start that discussion with regards to potential for providing funding in the sewer extension program for University Place? Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that we had a very good, robust discussion around the need for infrastructure and specifically around the sewer. I was one of those proponents that was talking that we need to look at sewer, though I'm only concerned is that when I mentioned it at the retreat initially was around the residential sewer needs for residential neighborhoods, not so much for the commercial. And then later on, it evolved into commercial infrastructure. And so when we talk about sewer of 6.5, I want to really understand what sewers are we talking about, commercial infrastructure, sewer needs, or residential? Because to me, I really felt that when I started this whole conversation back at the retreat was for the residential where there's really a big need and no help at all. Usually with the commercial side, we seem to get grants or we get some kind of funding that, or the developers do it, which many of their projects should be paying for sewer. But the residential side, those are the folks that really don't have any ammunition to get anything going. So I certainly want to have more disclosure and discussion around that. But yes, overall, should 6.5 million be considered for that kind of infrastructure? I would still, as long as residential is involved. If it's all commercial, I have an issue with that. Thank you.
Other council members, other thoughts? I'll put myself on the list, but I want to see if there's a list to speak. Is there other folks that want to jump in now? If not, let me add my thoughts to that too. Then, Councilmember Keel, are you? I see you're.
I was, and then when you started talking, and I took my hand down. But I think I agree with Councilmember Figueroa. We did talk very robustly about sewer, and I think with the money that we have, I mean, it's going to maybe be a long time before we have this amount of money available for us to do it. And in no way is this money going to solve all of our needs. I mean, I think the number is like 10 times that, right? Or something crazy. But it will help us in a certain area. So I'm all for, focusing it on sewer. I do share the concern and the desire to do that work in the residential area. Now, what I remember, there was a project up in the north, was that the east side of the city, where there was some kind of business that was coming in, but it was right smack in the middle of some residential, right? And so the sewer would go in main line for that business, but because it's passing a bunch of houses, other people can jump on the bandwagon. So I think it solves getting the big main, if that's what it's called, a big sewer main in there. But it's still, I think, to Councilmember Figueroa's point, I still think there still is an issue for the homes to connect, right? So there's still going to be some money, something that the homes are going to have to spend to connect, even if we were to just put this big main down the road. So I don't think we get around the residents not putting out some dollars, but it does help because they won't have to pay for that big main thing right in there. So I guess I'm going around long rounds way of saying that I hope that there's a way that we can leverage both to put in a main if there's going to be a business, but then also allow for the homes to spend some money to connect as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey, and then I'll follow. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Eric, are you interested in the details of business versus residential, or just in the aggregate amount of the 6.5 $5 million to work with Pierce County on that.
I think my primary interest was the 6.5. Secondarily, if you have comments related to that's welcome too. I can tell you that the project up in the northeast corner around 27th and 67th is designed to be paid for through the state grant, the 2.1, so not out of ARPA. And that would serve that business as well as Councilmember Keel mentioned, any other residential connections, because that's going to come all the way down, I believe, all the way down to 35th. So it's going to go around the corner. So it's a pretty long. So there will be residents that could benefit from that. I also would just very briefly add that the county's initial program, as it's being discussed by Councilmember Mello, has the ability for low-income people to get funds to help connect to main lines. So we're looking mainly at building main lines. There might be opportunities for low-income people or even moderate income people to qualify under the county's program as it's currently being discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, as I see the map with the orange and the green laid out, and I know we have limited funds and we can't solve this whole problem, but to strategically place the main sewer line in the best places that are higher prioritized, and also with hopefully some ancillary opportunities for residents to hook up. And I'm glad that Councilmember Mello is talking about having some grant funds for the lower income to be able to hook up, because essentially at the end of the day, you know, it's optimal to be hooked up to the sewers. And we do have, you know, 3 big chunks of properties here that are unsewered, and 9A is in a very sensitive area that is hooked up to our Puget Sound. And so, and that is quite an expensive endeavor. So I think we need to probably get a game plan for that, because it's probably going to have an expensive pump to pump it up and out. And I know that is probably an engineering feat in itself that's going to create extra millions of dollars to do that. And so just because the dollars have a higher amount, not to look at our city and to prioritize the whole city out, whether it's a commercial or residential, and then chunking out for the higher prioritization of the needs with the limited funding that we have.
Yeah, and we will be looking at both, bringing back to you, how would you prioritize this? What's the level of neighborhood interest? Because that has a big impact as well. So we'll be bringing back to you whatever sort of policies that we would recommend for you guys to discuss at a future date.
Okay, well, thank you. Is that, did that cover it for you, Councilmember McCluskey? Or did we?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Eric, and I look forward for that conversation in the future. It'll be probably a robust one as well.
Yes, I think it will be. And Councilmember Figueroa, I see your hand, but I was going to take a moment to share my thoughts, and then I can come back to you.
I just wanted to, just a little bit about Councilmember McCluskey's comment and Eric's, and that is, when you come back, Eric, would you please make sure that, because if we're going to match or co-match or work with the county, maybe they have other priorities within our city limits that they would more want to focus on, and it conflicts with ours. So something that we should hear from as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. So with regards to my thoughts on this, to begin with, the first question is $6.5 million. It is a significant amount of money, quite a bit of what the majorities, obviously, of what we are getting from ARPA. And I want it to go into an investment that repays our community again and again. And I think sewers are it. I also think 6.5 is about right. Perfect? No. About right? Yes, in terms of the money that's available and on hand. When we look at how sewers help us to protect our environment, how they do repay our community, how they can help us get economic development, and how they can also help us to achieve the densities that this community is planned for, needed to plan for under all the different guidance that is given to us. Sewers are key to it all. And they're the things that drive the economic engines for our real estate values in our community and virtually everywhere else. Sewers are a major piece of it. The property owners are the ones that end up benefiting from that, as does the community overall, as does the environment. It seems like the right investment, and I continue to be there. When we talk about residential properties, certainly, but I also think commercial properties are of interest as well. And it's not an either or in my mind. It is essentially both when the situations allow. Those commercial properties and the way that our zoning and our form-based code has evolved, those are tightly integrated into residential use nearby or even in the same lot. And they're not really exclusive to one another, at least in certain areas. One of the challenges, too, I think, is the cost that's associated with this. We have, through the good work of our staff, regardless if they look good or not, the good work of our staff, they have, and the help of our legislators, the 29th, it's been great. We have $2.1 million to move forward on this project in addition to the 6.5. So that $2.1 million, we get 2,600 feet of new sewer extension, and that helps quite a bit, but it is not the whole job, as we know. It's $800 a foot is what that cost. I mention that because that's a big number. And if you look at all the miles or the thousands of feet that it takes for us to get the city done, and it's more money than that in certain places. That's not universally $800 a foot. Sometimes it's multiples of that because there's pumps involved and other challenges, having to get under railroad tracks, having to do a variety of things that make it difficult. I'm also interested in where we spend the money. There's some ratio we get a good investment. We get some bang for our buck, and in some cases it will be a better investment than others. And to me, that is something we should help to prioritize. I certainly believe that we also want to be working with willing partners and not making an investment that is going to sit idle for 3 decades and all. It needs to be someplace where people will be able to use that asset that is being put into the ground. And I think some sense of how that builds our local economy is also important. So those were some things I just wanted to share. A mixture of residential and commercial. The money amount seems about right, and just a recognition of the cost is huge. And then one other thing to share. Tomorrow night, as I think all of our council members know, we have the county council coming back to in-district meetings, and we happen to be the first one, and it's going to be in the room I'm in tonight. It'll be tomorrow, Wednesday night. And they've invited the mayor to make a presentation about what's happening in University Place, and in her absence, I'll be doing my best to fill in, though it won't be the same. I'm sure she would do an excellent job with it. But while I'm there, I'm going to be also talking to him about sewers, if you think that's the right opportunity, because I think it is. And we'll have a chance to talk to them about our discussion tonight and our previous discussions, and just say we're getting ready. We hope you are too. So that's some of the things in front of us, but I wanted to share that information and all. Does anybody have any other thoughts or comments before we get ready for adjournment?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, that was on sewers. The other one I wanted to touch on, and I appreciate that direction. I think staff really likes that. It's very crystal clear. We know what we're doing. The other is on business assistance.
Yes, of course.
If you guys can give me some, or are we doing business assistance? Yes or no? And if we are, is there a preferred amount?
Oh, Eric, to help us with that, if I may, do you recall how much money we provided in business assistance and how many businesses roughly, we don't need an exact number, we serve?
I don't remember the number, but the amount was about $700,000.
Number that comes to mind to me is something like 26, 28, I don't know, but somebody else may have a better recall.
I think it was closer to 50 something.
Okay.
Correct.
It was 81.
81.
Oh, 81. Okay.
81, and it was 750,000. Okay, so I mentioned that just because it gives us some, if we do something similar, we could perhaps get to the same scale or a different scale. So, Council, what are your thoughts about business assistance? Yeah, Councilmember Figueroa.
I've been a big proponent of making sure that some of this HARPA money goes back to the businesses that are that have survived this pandemic of a year and a half, and it's not over with yet. It is still a huge gorilla on our small businesses. Most of our businesses are small businesses, and so they don't know if they're going to be shut down, how this COVID and variants are coming along. That certainly this whole pandemic has given them a huge hiccups where sometimes they can't get their breaths from hiring people, from people coming back to work, how long, people that come and spend money at their facility because they are afraid to come in and catch COVID, or how much they stay in there. It's has created a huge amount of havoc and uncertainty, and has cost them already more than what we have given them, and it's still costing them now. And I foresee, from what I can see right now, as Councilmember Lee alluded to earlier, where this is going, as we've seen in nationally, but here in Pierce County and the state of Washington. This is the bedrock of our of every community, is our small businesses, and they're the ones that kept their doors open and invested in our city to service our community and provide taxes that we need for services. And I think we need to give it back, some of this back. We got $2 million more than we weren't even expecting. We got $2 million for sewers that we weren't expecting. I think that we need to give back to our small businesses in a very generous way, and that goes with the $700,000 that we already did. Does it sound like a lot? I don't think so. If you look, most of this we're getting 10,000, 2,000, 5,000, 6,000. You can't tell me that those kind of monies are going to, make somebody rich out there. They've already lost more than that. So as far as I'm concerned, based on what I've heard and the monies that came in, certainly a chunk of that belongs to the small businesses. And I propose that we give them what we already have given before. I think the $750,000 was for both care packages. We got one, and then we got another one, and that is an aggregate amount. And I think that doing the same thing again would go a long ways for our council to say, we appreciate you, we're behind you. And as I've said this before, our main goal here with this is to keep our small businesses healthy. If we can't do that, we're in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember Keel.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm interested in helping businesses as well. The question I have, though, Eric, of the $6 million to $6.5 million we were talking about for the sewers, is the money for the business, is it separate money, or is it a part of that $6.5 million?
It would be separate.
Okay, so what's the total that we have in the pot for business right now?
Well, we don't, at the retreat, I had a plug number of 100,000, but that was just a plug. And I will add one other thing, which is Becky Metcalf is here tonight. And so, and she, being the expert in this area, could fill us in all the details and what's going on in the wider county and community and that sort of thing. So maybe the best route here is, if I can understand, if there is a majority interested in sewers, we can schedule more time where she can present more information, which could help you decide on the appropriate amount.
If I may, Mayor, to answer Councilmember Keel's.
Just a second. Eric, I think you said sewers, and I think you meant to say business. Is that correct?
I meant business. I'm sorry.
All right.
Just real quick to answer your question, Councilmember Keel, is that was 9.4 or 9.7 million that was allocated. So we're only talking about 6.5. Subtracted from that, at least 2.9 million left outside of the sewer that we need to discuss how we want to spend it. 2.9, and what we're talking about here, 700,000 out of that 2.9, that would still leave $2.2 million left that could go to the city, could go for whatever else. So I just want to make sure you got your question answered.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that, because that's what I'm trying to get. How big is the universe here, right? So we've got the 6.5 for the sewer. We've got another 2-something million that we're getting from the county that's going to go to sewer, and then I'm hearing there's another $9 million somewhere else.
2.9.
2.9 that's out there that we could use, and I don't know where the 700,000 number came from, but there's of the 2.9, but yes, I'm interested in the business, and I think all the 2.9 doesn't go to the business, but there's a number, right? And I don't think it's 100,000 if that was the total thing. I think it's probably something significantly larger than that, given that the field is 2.9 million, right? So, yeah. Okay, that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members want to weigh in on the question about business assistance at this stage? Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I concur. I would like to look at business assistance and to see where the needs are, and have Becky Metcalf come in and do a report so that we can make the right and logical decision and to figure out the right number that we would like to give to the business. And also in the other care package, we were looking at other the underserved people as well in our community. But if we're just talking about business right now, I'm for pursuing that, and maybe with the other 2.2 million that's left, we can talk about some of the other things we had done in the past. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So other potentials, and Councilmember Lee, or Council Pro Tem Lee. Not to put you on the spot, but I guess I will. Anything you'd care to add?
No, I'm all for what's. I concur with what my colleagues have said. I have nothing more to add. I think Becky, I'd like to have Becky come back though and give us a overview of just what we have. And thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you. So, Councilmember Figueroa, in a moment I'll call on you. I wanted to if your hand is up for a reason, I know sometimes it can be accident. But from my perspective, certainly I'm interested in helping the business community. I would agree that having some input from knowing the programs that are out there today, what's going on and where the gaps are, would be certainly helpful. Other potentials, though, we have some cost and some gaps are of our own in terms of internal to the city. And while I don't think all of those funds that remain uncommitted at this point, or at least talked about, would be necessary to cover that. And I think the business community, in my view, can use additional help. some of that coming back to fill in gaps we as an entity have experienced. I think my mic just went off. Okay, I think nonetheless you got the most of it. Yeah. All right. Then, Councilmember Figueroa, do you want to wrap this one up for us?
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, I just wanted to make sure the 700 that I mentioned, Councilmember Kill, I should have said 750. It was 750,000, approximately 750, that was provided for business assistance in the last 2 rounds of CARES. That's where that number comes from. And I believe that based on these monies that came in unexpectedly, very nice, certainly to provide that 750,000, 700,000 back to them still leaves us with 2.2. And I agree with Councilmember McCluskey that, we did provide some to a nonprofit for certain assistance in the community, given a couple $100,000 for that. Whatever we can do to give back to our community, I think is really important. I think that's still left with monies that can be left for unforeseen expenditures in the future with this monies, as well as some city needs that still maybe needs to be met. But I think that we really need, I'm really encouraging us to consider the full gamut of what we provided before in this round back to the businesses and some to the community for the underserved portion of our community members.
Thank you, Mayor, or thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember McCluskey, did you have something else you wanted to add? I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I guess I didn't put it down.
Oh, no problem. All right.
Usually somebody does that for me, so I was getting spoiled.
No problem. Then I think, Eric, do you have a sense of where council's interests lie?
I understand, and we will get something scheduled. Clearly, the business assistance will move at a faster pace than the sewer, so we hope to get that scheduled for you soon. We'll work with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem to get that done.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you for your help tonight. So I think we are about at our closing and get to wrap up our evening with 4 minutes to spare. So that sounds like a pretty good plan to me. Any case, I guess I wanted to offer some opportunity to talk about this hybrid and debrief it a little bit, but maybe we can do that with email. I have a few thoughts that I'll share with staff and my observations from working the seat here, and if you have other thoughts. Does anybody have anything right offhand they want to share about the hybrid meeting, just as a chance for feedback loop?
I would say, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't raise my hand. I think it worked well tonight. I mean, surprisingly well. Even I'm glad we had a person inside a citizen that came to the microphone and did that. So the only 2 things is that I see in your window, Mayor Pro Tem, you have Emelita's name. So if we could just, maybe that's, I've seen where that's like headquarters or something like that, if it's the thing in the room. So, and we could change that. That's a nit, right? But I'm just giving you feedback. The only other thing that I have a question about is, how did we come across? Is there a big TV in the room there with you, with all of us?
Yeah.
And
so
then how did we come across it?
Yeah, there's 3 big TVs. Now, you remember the 2 big TVs mounted on the walls. They're still there, and actually they seem to be even better. There's also a freestanding TV that is next to the dais that the audience can easily see. And so that provides an audience view as well. And the sound system is working well in the room. It seems to be balanced. And you can see things pretty well. One quick observation I have is there's no way I can watch the big screen up there and actually see the individual hands wave or raised. They're tiny little micro dots when they're 30 feet away. And I can look for them and see them if I try, but it's hard to in the rush of things. And so it's important that you have a screen here to look at.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm wondering if they can have a screen in front of us at the dais that we can see the big TVs and stuff. So.
Yeah, I did bring my computer, and that's helpful. And even it is a little hard it's probably training for me to get used to if I get to do this again, but it's just some feedback there. But so that's a little piece, a nit, but it all gets better.
Yeah, so from my end over here, everything was great. Even when you said people were freezing up when Matt was talking, he never froze on our end. Okay. So that was all in the chambers. Yeah.
It was just in here, and it was on the room's TVs, but not, okay, that's good to know, or at least it's good for me. Anyone else? Are we all good? Then, oh yes, Councilman McCluskey.
No, we're waving goodbye.
Waving goodbye, okay, all right.
No, not this time, not this time.
Okay, all right.
I would just, just really quick, when you're doing the, I noted that there's some rough transitions, especially with the mic and some of the logistics there. The other thing is when the panoramic came in, you were like a little minion there. And so I'm not sure, it's nice to see the whole council chamber, but maybe just focusing in on the dais or actually the people who are there, because it doesn't make sense to show the empty seats. It looks like nobody's home or somebody looking at it, but then I like the perspective that Councilmember Keel had, like, what do we look like, when we're doing it virtually? So I liked how that was shown, but if people are in the chamber, we don't really need to see that. So basically, who's on the dais to be focused in, that I think that would give a better, more personal feel to it, rather than the panoramic shot, because it looks pretty vacant and like nobody's home, nobody's running for, nobody's at the meeting, when actually we're all there. So that's kind of it. So when that panoramic shot is there in the screen, then the other council members will be your largeness will match everyone else's. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Good observation. I appreciate that. And and working the mic will maybe come with time, or maybe there's a better way. But yeah, good. Okay. Well, if not anything else, and appreciate the comments, and thank you for letting me chair your meeting this evening, and look forward to next time when Mayor Bellisi will be back for us. In the meantime, have a great night. Thank you. And this evening's meeting is closed.